Well, I'll get things started. I know it's just 7:01. I'm Helene Gidley, the organizer of Agile Groupies. Tom Alash is a co-organizer and my business partner as well at A2 Agile. Tom, wave your hand, say hello. So we are just getting started. We have a lovely session this evening, the Path to Hours, which I'm really looking forward to. And I'm just, if I look a little distracted, I'm letting people in as they're just beginning to join. This is great. We had 38 people who had RSVP that they were coming. So I expect to see people keep joining as we do some of our preamble and our entry here. And we had people join from, there were 3 meetup groups that this has been posted on: the Agile Groupies, the Daytona Devs, for those who might be coming from Florida, and then the Ann Arbor Tech Meetup, which is a Ann Arbor focused meetup that is more of a mix or a conglomeration of all the technical happenings in and around Ann Arbor. So you may be coming in from any one of those meetups, and we're so glad to have you here. Again, I'm Helene Gidley from A2 Agile, and the company that Tom and I are partners on. I'm also the organizer of Agile Groupies. So glad to have everybody here. Kyle Griffin is our speaker this evening on this odd topic, right? The path to hours. And I'm very interested in hearing as Kyle walks us through kind of what's good about each way of getting something of value into our customers' hands. And so while we have the little bio of Kyle, little background of Kyle, having been writing code since 1981 and hasn't been away from it much since then, and that you've been a practitioner, teacher, and coach and leader for technical as well as agile topics. And I love how you just put in, oh, and you've co-authored a couple of books. Well, I had to speak highly of this book. It is like one of my absolute favorite books of all time. So it's called The Scrum Princess, written by Kyle and your wife, right? And you've got someone who does these beautiful drawings, and it is written as a kid's story. And it tells the story of Scrum and how this princess goes around getting things done in her kingdom and learning a few things along the way of like how to organize things and prioritize things and how to make choices about what she builds and how she works with her teams and how she slowly, works her way iteratively through items on her list. So for anybody with young children, or this is really best suited for the CEO leaders and above. Well-written.
Young children.
Yeah, young children and the C-level suite. So they're kind of the same. It works really well to explain what's all about this whole agile thing. So great reading, great book from Kyle. That gives you an insight of what Kyle is like and how he looks at things in a slightly different way. And can share it with people in a well understood fashion. So without much further ado, I'm going to let Kyle get started as people continue to join in. So welcome everyone, and we are recording, so you'll be able to get all of this at the end. But Kyle, thank you for joining us, and I'll let you take it away.
I'm mildly sad that we're going to miss some of the people joining at the beginning because they'll miss my introductory puns, right? It's sad.
Well, they'll get it on the recording.
Thank you, Helene.
Yes, yeah.
Hey, I'm Kyle. I've lost visibility on myself, so I hope I'm still there.
Yeah, we can see you.
Okay, very good. Okay, this discussion is about the path to hours, and I have introductory stuff in the middle of the conversation, so I'm not going to do anything else for introducing. I'm just going to go ahead and get going. Topic is the path to hours. I call it the gold standard for Agile. And let's go. Let's start with a discussion of motivation. When somebody goes out and they take time to build a talk like this, a lot of the time, the talk, you're doing it and you go, gosh, there's a reason for doing the talk. And I like to admit biases up front. I like to be super clear in where I'm coming from. So here's where I'm coming from. I have 5 kids. That's part of why we have children's books for Agile too, right? 5 kids means that I may or may not have had this conversation 500 times in my life. Hey, the 4-year-old says, I want to wear the Batman costume. If you've ever had a kid or been near a kid, you've probably heard that sentence before. And then you tell the 4-year-old, hey, we're going swimming. Hopefully, this indicates to the 4-year-old that the Batman costume is the wrong outfit. And the 4-year-old takes your idea seriously and says, I like the Batman costume. And then you try and explain further. Hey, you know, when foam padding gets wet, it gets very heavy and it pulls you under the water and you sink. And then the 4-year-old says, I want the Batman costume. Right? That's my experience of what actually happens when you talk to the 4-year-old, right? And I mean, I come from a world where you take people's opinions seriously, even 4-year-olds. And so having the conversation rather than just beating them and saying, no, you're wearing a bathing suit. We try to have the conversation. So this conversation happens a lot. I've had this experience, but when you talk to a 4-year-old for the 4th time or the 40th time or the 400th time, it's not very surprising. When you talk to somebody about doing Agile and the conversation is the same, it is a bit surprising. Hey, I want to do Agile. Great. You want to do Agile. What's the real goal? What are we trying to achieve? Let's do Scrum. Scrum isn't something you're trying to achieve. Did you know that? We're 6 people on 4 different teams, and all we do is firefighting and maintenance. Let's get certified. Have you had that conversation? Because I've had that conversation.
I'm still having that conversation.
I'm kind of tired of that conversation. Like, really, that conversation is getting to me. And it's not that I don't think Scrum is good for a lot of things. It's just that this particular thing is not what Scrum's good at. And then besides that, I started going back and forth. And somebody will say, let's do SAFe. And I say, great, SAFe is good for some things. Are we doing any of the things that SAFe is good for? They say, we're going to pay $7 million to Leffingwell for a site license. Okay. Still, we should decide what thing we're doing based on what we're trying to do, not based on who's got what certification and sold what to whom. So, my claim, there is something rotten in the state of Agile. We keep picking frameworks without picking a framework for a good why. And I'd like to address that. Well, I'm interested in the topic of methods of problem solving. One of the reasons Tom tolerates me is that I have a background in philosophy. And so I discuss, when I come to a disagreement with somebody, I go, oh, that's very interesting. Let's back up until we find the point of disagreement. And so we back up, and then we back up some more, and then we back up some more. And eventually we get to a place where we say, oh, here's where we agree. And then the step after that is where we disagree. So my question is, how do you decide how to go about solving a problem? Right? That's two hows out, not just one how out. And it's certainly not just let's solve the problem. Let's talk about it. My claim. I know it's silly. I know a lot of people do this. When you're solving problems, I'm going to argue that there's two, and I can argue about the parts of the two, but I'm going to try to divide solving problems into two fundamental methods. And then, because this is how I approach everything, I'm going to talk about what methods are good for what types of problems. And then I'm going to go into a little more detail. So let's talk about types of problems. I want to tie my shoes. I want to tie my shoes. It's a simple problem. My favorite way to solve a simple problem is to do the exact same thing I did last time that worked. I get my solution. I get my solution like I learned how to tie my shoes a very long time ago, right? And there's something about rabbits and trees and going around and stuff. And following that method ties my shoes. It ties my shoes today. It tied my shoes back in 1976. Right? There's a lot of shoe tying that happened. And you know what? In 45 years of tying my shoes, I have changed how I tie my shoes once. Sometime in my 30s, I discovered that you could do it a different way, and it was slightly better. But the amount of attention I spend on tying my shoes, no, I don't spend attention. I do the thing. Very simple, very easy, same way I did it last time. Next claim. This is not the only kind of problem you have. Some problems, you have a problem that looks like, can we go down the field? And you draw up a play and you say, we're going to have numbers 68 and 32 block the defenders, and we're going to push them to the right so that number 37 with the ball can run around to the left. Right? That's a play. And then somewhere in the play, they're jumping over some dude. And I guarantee you, jump over some dude is not part of the written up play. Except Tom tells me that the recent Michigan football games, it is part of the written up play. But jump over some dude isn't part of the play. What you have is, you have a direction, you have a beginning, and then you adapt to the goal. You have a goal, a beginning, and then you have to adapt. Fundamentally, there's two different problem-solving methods. One is, do it the same way. The other one is, I have a goal and I'm going to have to adjust. I think I've already demonstrated that the different methods are good for some things. So if you have a simple problem and you follow the process, everything works. You tie your shoes successfully. You don't spend any extra energy on it. Yay, everybody's winning. If you have a hard problem and you approach it via a goal with adaptation, then again, we succeed moderately well. But those aren't the only two situations. If you have a simple problem and you try and use adaptive methods to do that, you're going to waste a reasonable amount of energy. There's no way it's reasonable that you have your goal and you try and figure out new paths to do it to tie your shoe every time. That's nuts. I'm going to spend months of my life working on figuring out ways to tie my shoe instead of just doing it. But so you waste your time. But if you try and follow the process on a hard problem, you end up doing cargo cult stuff. You build a satellite dish out of hay bales, and it doesn't work. There is no contacting the aliens with a satellite dish of hay bales. Right? You actually, for hard problems, have to adapt your way there, not do the thing you saw somebody else do or you read about in a book. Key line. If you have a problem, make sure you know what kind of problem it is so that you can use the right kind of solution. Now, here's the thing. I fundamentally am interested in hard problems and adaptation, and I think those are software problems, and I think the other ones are great problems to have, and a lot of real life problems fall in that category, and basically none of my software problems fall in that category, and so I don't want to talk about them. I want to talk about adapting in order to deal with hard problems. So let's do some how do we solve hard problem discussion. We'll use a simple thing. I'm going to stick some stuff together. Cool. I know sticking stuff is together, so we'll just pick the easy solution, right? Oh, there's more than one solution. Mm-hmm. If I'm going to stick stuff together, there's screws, there's nails, there's bolts, there's staples, there's clamps, there's paper clips, there's needle and thread, there's glue. I have thumbtacks. I can use rope. Maybe sticking stuff together isn't very hard. How do we go about deciding? Well, we should probably ask ourselves some questions in order to say, how do we go about starting? Well, one question that we have is a question about the materials. What kinds of things are we sticking together? Do you actually know? Are we dealing with metal? Are we dealing with paper? Are we dealing with 2x4s? Rope? Are we attaching a boat to something or a bicycle? Are we trying to hook parts of a shirt back together? Each one of the domains you run into will lead to different answers. How long do I want the things to stay stuck together? I have a particular fondness for the duration under which we are addressing the concern, because stuff that I want to be stuck together for a couple hours or a couple days, maybe I do it differently than if I want it to be stuck together for a couple decades. And then there's a bunch of trade-offs. Do you want to be able to undo your sticking? Right? If you want to undo the sticking, it may be that glue is the wrong answer. Do you care about damaging the original materials? Can I put holes in them? Because if you can put holes in them, that will lead to one set of results, whereas if you can't put holes, it might lead to a different one. How about the quality of the output? Lovely tattoo. I mean, that's not actually a horrid tattoo if they were attempting to draw Trogdor the Burninator. But it could be they were just trying to draw a dragon. Edward knows the Burninator, so that's good. It could be they were trying to draw a dragon, and that's not a great tattoo of a dragon. There's some interesting questions when choosing methods about how much expertise you need in order to do that thing. And of course, there's cost involved as well. Let's take a couple more kinds of things to address. What about tools? Well, if I'm going to use wood glue, then I need to use a vise to hold it together so that it sticks, right? Because the glue has to harden. If I'm going to do a screw, I need screwdrivers. If I'm going to use bolts, I'm probably using a wrench, though sometimes you can get away with a screwdriver on one side. Nails take hammers, needle and thread. I like sewing machines better than I like hand sewing most of the time. Staples take a stapler, thumbtacks take a thumb. A lot of the time for bolts or screws, you also need a drill. Gosh, getting the right tool for the job is a pretty big deal. I finally found chat, so thank you. But the tools have prerequisites. If you are going to hammer stuff in, it takes some amount of strength. Again, my 5 kids. I've watched 4-year-olds hammering things. They're not very good at it, and it's not just because they can't aim, right? They just don't put enough oomph into the hammer. They don't have the musculature most of the time to do much good hammering. If you have a drill, you'll need some source of electricity, or else the drill doesn't roll. I've run into that problem more than once. And if you're going to use a thumbtack, you have to not be a dog, right? And sometimes on the internet, you can be a dog and nobody notices. The prerequisites matter, right? So, like, I thought we had a simple problem here, didn't we? We had the problem, I want to stick some stuff together. It's not looking like it's a simple problem. I opened the first web page I could find on the discussion of screws versus nails, and here's my trade-off list. Screws tend to be used for small and medium-sized projects. They tend to be very good. Nails tend to be used for large projects. Partly, the nails are used for large projects because they have a little more flexibility, even though the screws have more tensile strength. The screws attach things together more tightly, but they don't have as much wiggle room. So if the board expands due to water, they're not going to respond as well as a nail will, which will adapt to the slightly growing boards. There's a lot of things, even if you want to decide between screw and nail. How the heck are we supposed to make a decision like this quickly? Oh, I know, we'll use nails. But there's a lot of trade-offs there. I'm going to end here for a moment with choosing fasteners is hard. But then, I think choosing a software method is a harder problem. So here's my question. My claim, and again, I'm going to go back to where we were way long time ago. I back up in my slides. For a hard problem with adaptation, our thing is we need a goal to adapt towards. So as we go, we need to say, what is our goal? And based on the goal, what kind of practices are we going to do? Couple prerequisites here before. Okay, so I've done what I call the introduction. I'm framing the problem. This is how I think about the problem. Look, picking a solution is a hard problem. And I really wanted to impress how hard of a problem it is instead of just saying, oh, here's how I pick a solution. Please feel free to jump in. There's only 20-ish of us, and so conversational is good. So here's my claim. When doing software, if I say, what have I seen over the course of since 1981, what have I seen people attempt to achieve in software? Not, hey, can I build a website, or can I build an accounting software, or that? What have I seen people try to achieve in deciding how to do their software? And I'm going to claim I've seen about 5 goals. Also, having seen those 5 goals, I have about 5 time frames that I've heard people talk about. And so the interesting claim here that I want to make is, I think that the time frame that you're talking about and the goal you end up talking about are pretty intrinsically linked. In fact, I bet that if you tell me what time frame you're talking about, and when I say time frame, I'm saying, how long does it take on average for you to go from please to thank you? If a customer says, hey, I'd like this, how long before they say, thank you for giving that to me? If you tell me the please to thank you timeframe, not the if it got to the Scrum team and we started until it got to the test team timeframe, but if you say please to thank you, I can tell you most of what we want to know about your software just from that one number. But I don't think that's primary. I think what's primary is the goal you're chasing. So 5 goals. Goal number 1 is completion. Is the software done? Yes or no? That's the only question. Is it done? Is it done on time? Is it going to be there on the date? Question 2. When we make this change, are we going to break anything? Question 3. Hey, can we go faster? Can we make it cheaper? Question 4. Hey, I'd like to be able to respond to changes as they come up. Question 5. I have a guess for what the customer needs, but I know that I don't know what the customer really needs. How are we going to find out? Legitimately in software, those are the 5 goals I have run into. And those 5 goals, it's a pretty big deal. You talk about one of those goals, it's associated with a time frame, it's associated with questions, it's associated with practices, it's associated with behaviors. Couple comments before we move into the goals. A lot of people go, oh, well, Scrum's easy. 3 roles, 5 events, 3 artifacts. Right? That's what they say, right? So there's only 11 things in Scrum, right? Yeah, but building software has hundreds of practices. How do you check in? How do you decide what work is being done? How many steps? How do you approve things? How do you move things from request to testing, right? There's all of these practices. How do you hire new developers? How do you onboard new developers? How do you do knowledge transfer from one developer's application and their application to a different developer? Right? I'm not going to go on for 500 practices, but there's an absurd number of practices that are involved in software, even as far as how do you compensate people for helping with other people's work? Which is, of course, a major success factor in Scrum, right? If you're compensating people only for their own work, then they don't help each other as much, and you don't get as good of cross-functional teams. So we're really talking about all sorts of stuff, from HR to how you type on the keyboard, right? The crazy levels of practices. So here's one of my crazy claims. Practices, since there's so many of them, they start forming little gravity wells. This practice helps us deliver software once. And you know what? When I figure out what the next practice I should do is, it will either conflict with my goal of delivering software once, or it will support the goal. Either they're fighting or they're working together. And so what happens is, when you're doing software, you build networks and you build masses of practices that all fit together. And guess what happens next? Next time you introduce another practice, it's either a conflicting practice, in which case it'll get worn down by erosion and it'll move closer to the stuff that it currently is there. Or it already fits in and it'll support the goal that we have implicitly chosen. If I were going to give you one answer as to why so many agile adoptions fail, that would be my answer. I'm trying to introduce 11 practices of Scrum into an organization that is optimized for delivering once. Guess what? The Scrum practices, which are optimized for delivering every couple of weeks, are conflicting with the other practices, and eventually something is going to get worn down. The 400 practices that support delivering once are going to wear down the practices that Scrum asks you to do. Practices build gravity wells. And my claim is you've got 5 major gravity wells in software. Gravity well number 1 is what I'd call the completionist focus. It is focused on now. Are we done yet? And then there's 4 more that I'll talk about after that, which are future focused. Any one of the goals is reasonable. I'd just like us to admit what they are and stay focused on it. There's another little bit of work somewhere. It was done by, I think, Diana Larson and James Shore on the topic of agile fluency models. If you look it up, the agile fluency model is an interesting thing. I've seen it on Fowler's page and have looked at it a few times over several years. So honestly, I didn't understand it the first time I looked at it. One of the things fluency models brings up is that if you are doing things one way and you leave and you go, say, I'll use my example here. You leave your completion model and you travel to your stability model. Turns out the stability model is a gravity well. You get stuck there. Going from completion to efficiency is 2 or 3 times faster than going from completion to stability and then stability to efficiency. If you go for a goal, it is better by serious research to go directly to the goal you're chasing. Maybe go near some of the other ones, but as I like to say, don't get too close. If you need to do a little bit of stability on the way to a responsiveness model, that's okay. But if you do a lot of stability focus, you're gonna get stuck in stability. The practices reinforce, and the things that you do to get to stability will keep you in stability and prevent you from moving out of it. Again, it's like a star. It's a gravity well. Let's talk present focus. I got 5 goals. Let's go through them. Present focus. The present focus is a focus on completion, right? And I know anybody who's even gone near a software project in the last 40 years has heard this before. Hey, when will it be done? Right? What's interesting to a lot of us who come from an agile world is we're going, hey, we're going to go forward. And it seems like nobody can get off of that one question. It's like there's only one question in the entire software world. When will it be done? Right? If they have a second question, their second question is it red, green, or yellow for done on that date? There's one question. There's only one question. And sometimes they phrase the question differently. But the question is date, 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 and date. That's it. Nothing else matters. They're not thinking in terms of cycles at all. They are thinking, I am going to deliver this piece of software on this date. The date is the thing that matters. Everything else is a side effect. Full stop. That's a way of delivering software. You know what? I'm not 100% convinced that it's a bad idea if you are a contract software house delivering software for an organization. Is it done? Is it done yet? Are we there yet? Right? That's the question. If you're delivering a completed piece of software as a contract firm that is not going to get any further money, you know, that might be the economic right choice. However, 90% of software, more or less, ends up being built in-house by people doing stuff or by projects managed in-house. We don't outsource a project. We outsource some of the work for the project. And I'm not sold that paying attention only to the present day and is it done yet is the right way to deliver software. In fact, I would claim that the single biggest distinction between old school software delivery and what we're chasing more recently is this single difference. The difference between present focus and future focus. I think everybody talking software except for when will it be done? Is it done yet? Is it red, yellow, green? Except for those people. Everybody else talking software is talking about a future focused goal. And crazy, this is the big gap. Once you get past the gap of present versus future focus, then we can have interesting conversations. But it is the biggest gap we're going to face. Well, maybe. Biggest gap after, hey, let's wear a Batman costume. No, goal first, method second, right? Present focus is the big gravity well. It's why it's a black hole, right? Because it's got the most gravity. Future focus. I'm going to claim there's 4 future focused things that I've seen. We've talked about them. One of them is a focus on stability. I would like my software to be built, and then I would like it not to break. I would like it to say secure. An awful lot of the time when you're interacting with software, this is the kind of discussion. Note, this is a future focus. We are attending to the future and being able to preserve the software and make sure it doesn't break. Make sure our current customers can keep using the stuff and it's not going to break. That's a real goal. I want to applaud anybody who has this goal for having a goal and pursuing. It's not the kind of goal I tend to focus on, but that's Kyle's opinion. That's not what everybody should be doing. Some software. You want stable answers. You want, hey, I want it safe, I want it secure, I want it relatively unchanging. Every time I have had an agile argument with somebody from Microsoft, they come down and they say, look, you don't understand. I want the bugs from the 1982 version of Microsoft Word to stay preserved in our newest release. I don't just want the features, I want the bugs so it's backwards compatible. Do you want stability? We want stability. We want the same things to keep working. Gosh, that's a real goal. Note, I don't really understand that model. That's not the way I think. But Microsoft's doing pretty well as a company still, right? I can't tell them they're stupid. They want to preserve their way of doing things. They make a boatload of money doing it that way. Good on you, Microsoft. It's a goal. It's stable. And if you listen to people in stable worlds, they are talking about yearly cycles. Hey, we'd like to make a change next year. We'd like to make a change in 2 years. Right? These are the kinds of things that come up. How do you get to stability? Well, phase gates work, right? Making sure that you don't move forward on your requirements without checking that those are the right requirements. That's actually a pretty good idea if what you want is stability. Having an architectural review board so that you don't introduce bad ideas into the architecture, that's pretty good for stability. Code reviews, code freeze, checklists, more checklists, more checklists. Those are good, right? They promote stability. A focus on compliance. Anytime you hear people talking lots about compliance, you're probably talking about people who are trying to get to stability. And another thing that you see a lot in groups that are focused on stability is you see focus on groups having clear duties. This group should do this work, that group should do that work. We want to make sure of that. Those are great things to see when you hear discussions of stability. Cool. One possible future state goal is stability. Usually after you do stability for a while, somebody says, but wait, can we go faster? Right? Like legitimately, this is what happens next. You end up with a group that is doing something and they have solved some part of the stability problem. And they ask about, can we do it cheaper or can we do it faster? Better occasionally comes up, but really it's mostly faster and cheaper. People like time to market a lot when talking about efficiency. They also, when talking about efficiency, are very rarely talking about giant changes. What we end up in discussions of is how can we do the same things we currently do faster, better, and cheaper? Not how do we do different things that would substantially change stuff. My experience is that when you're talking better, faster, cheaper, the time frames that we are talking about tend to be quarters. Hey, what I'd really like to be able to do is release software on a quarterly cycle rather than every year or year and a half or 3. The first tool a lot of smarter people in this space use is they pull out a value stream and go, hey, look at where all your delays are. You've had these conversations, Edward. Right? How do you manage the dependencies inside our group? How do we have more meetings to coordinate so that we don't trip over each other and step on each other's toes? Theory of constraints, again, along with value streams, tends to be a good area of focus. If you have dependencies between big groups, maybe we can get rid of a few of those. You will see discussions where we talk about doing the same things we're already doing, but doing them better. Hey, let's have our architectural review board meet twice a week instead of once a month, right? Let's actually run these cycles quicker and better. And maybe we can do this time to market. A lot of the time, these discussions end up being, hey, what's our leadership structure? What's our organizational structure? What teams should we have? How should the hierarchy go? Right? Those are the kinds of questions you end up seeing, or at least these are the ones I've seen. If I'm wrong, tell me, because I think I'm wrong a lot. So feel free to add bits for me. Efficient is nice, but and I don't want to be mean. Efficient is a good choice for a lot of organizations. If what I'm trying to do is deliver software, and I find that my software delivery takes me a year and a half, it may well be that the right choice for software delivery is just to say, no, let's get good at what we do. Instead of delivering every 500 days, let's see if we can deliver every 100 days. That's a real goal. I am not knocking that goal. I don't resonate much with that goal personally, but it is a goal. And I think that a lot of people will say, you know what? This is an agile thing. And that's perfectly reasonable. However, it fails to communicate a lot, because if some people are trying to do stability goals and maybe calling them agile, and other people are trying to do efficiency goals and calling them agile, and other people are trying to do responsiveness goals and calling them agile, how the heck are we supposed to talk to each other? Right? So I'm inclined, and you'll note I'm cheating with color. Hey, look, it's a red star. It's an orange star, right? I've got my red goal of stability. I've got my orange goal of efficiency. This is nominally yellow, right? I have a yellow goal of responsiveness. My claim, the agile people in 2001 were trying to do responsiveness. When you talk to people about responsiveness, then you hear words like competition. Hey, I'm going to need to stay ahead of the competition. I need to be able to respond to market shifts. I need to be able to change to deal with new information. And when I talk about these things, I almost always get people who are talking about weeks to finish a chunk of work. Like, legitimately, if you find a bunch of people who are talking about competition, market shift, and change, you're going to hear them using weeks as the time frame. Maybe it's 2 weeks, maybe it's 1 week, maybe it's 6 weeks, 4 weeks. Yeah, those are good numbers. You don't hear them talking quarters, right? That's not responsiveness. That's not how the people talk. How do you get towards responsive? We start yanking dependencies, right? If I was going to give one piece of advice, I say, start killing dependencies, right? You want responsiveness, you need the ability to make a change here and not have to make a change anywhere else. You need to remove some of the separation between your groups, right? Hey, you're not going to get down towards a week if the test group is a different group than the dev group, if the deploy group is separate, if the requirements group sits over in a different building and sends us stuff every month, right? That doesn't get you to weeks. You start breaking down the walls between the groups and working together more closely. You start removing the approvals. You start automating. Wait a minute. How many of these things are things that made stability and efficiency work? The things that we're starting to take away here. The things that make stability work, the things that make efficiency work, they're the things that stop responsiveness from working. That's a really interesting outcome here, right? It means basically that if I'm talking in weeks about Agile and I'm talking to somebody else who is talking in quarters about Agile, the practices that we recommend are going to be actively opposed to one another.
Yeah.
Yikes. By the way, people in these worlds use words like please and thank you, right? Which is the path that I started talking about a long time ago. Somebody else used the words what to woot, and I love that, by the way, as a different way of saying it. Lead time is a different way to say it, but it's all the same idea. What's your cycle to go from somebody wants something to they're using it? And then I discovered in the last month, mostly by yelling at Tom, by that this isn't actually what I think. Right? I think this is what Agile started as in 2001, but I think there's a layer past there. And I'm going to call that layer the learning model. And my learning model is, hey, let's get a pitching machine and send 500 balls at us over the course of a half hour and see how many of them we can hit, right? And what am I going to do? I'm going to adjust the whole way and get better at batting. So I'm talking about that kind of learning, the rapid learning model. When you talk to people who are focused on learning, the questions they ask are, hey, no, what does the customer really need? I know what the requirement says, but that's not interesting. What's interesting is what does the customer need for reals? You hear words like, hey, let's try that. I don't expect that's what's going to work, but let's try it and we'll learn something. You hear, hey, I'm going to be wrong a lot, and that's okay, right? And when you talk about cycles, you talk about these crazy people who are learning focused, they end up talking about day cycles. Sometimes they talk about hour cycles. right? Those are the kinds of things that the learning people start making noise about. And so you end up with a path to learning, a path to hours that says, hey, I'm going to include the customer feedback inside of the cycle time that I pay attention to. So it's not please to thank you, it's please to customer says, well, it would be nice if, to fixing it to thank you. It's getting a better product is probably better than doing it a little faster. But usually you can get to better by being faster. The size of the unit we're working with ends up dominating. Hey, how fast can you do a spelling change on a page while going through your normal process? Can you do it in 10 minutes and have it on production? Right? How much monitoring do you have in your systems so that you detect changes faster and detect what we need to do faster? Are we running A/B tests? Are we doing better than A/B tests and trying 3 different things and showing all of them to the users and seeing what the results are? Right? When somebody asks, can you do it? Speed isn't really one of the constraints you worry about anymore. And the focus in discussions tends to be on the customer and on a lot of technical improvement. If you want to take the path to hours, these are the things that move you towards hours. How long does it take a small correct change into production? How big are the units we're working on? Are you paying attention to human error, which happens a lot, and your mitigation strategies? Are you doing monitoring? Do you have an approach of experimentalism? Are you doing set-based development? And how often do you actually have people communicating directly with the customers? If I was going to pursue it, a learning path, a path in hours, these are my questions. I've been told I should put sales things here. If you want the blue star, if you want the learning approach specialist, that's what I do. You can find me. I just wish people would actually say, hey, I'm talking about quarters agile, or I'm talking about weeks agile. Hey, I'm talking about efficiency agile, or I'm talking about learning agile, because those aren't even related. And I'm really tired of I'm really tired, of course, Edward, of these miscommunications that happen when we call all of these things agile, and yet there's 3 deeply different or 4 deeply different goals, even past the do it once, or maybe even the stability goal. I'm going to shut up and let other people talk for a minute, because I like talking with other people and I just have a lot. I'm hard to shut up.
To me, the most interesting idea in here is that each of these is a gravity well. So if you pick a destination, I sort of imagine now, and I think you need to paint the pennies different colors and have them, but it's like each time you move, if you go to stability, and we're currently working at a place where of all the words you listed, only stability is the word they use. Like stability is going to be dropping in several hundred coins of that color into a new gravity well. So if you're going to learning, you're going to get out of the gravity well of just get it done. You're getting into a new gravity well of stability, and you have to take all, and that might be years to get from one to the other. And then it's going to take years to move onto another one if you choose or add another one. And that to me in this conversation is sort of what's so important.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And it was your recognition, Kyle, as you stepped through each of these goals and recognizing that what you need to do, right? The practices you need to do to be efficient, right, are now, and then you laid out, well, what do you need to do to be responsive? And then it just sort of hit you in the face that, oh my God, they're different. And they're counterproductive, right? And that's what you mean, and you get it, right? That this is how you get stuck in these places. So that was really insightful, and why things, I think that's exactly why things stall in certain places, because you get stuck. Bob G, you have raised your hand.
Yeah, Kyle, I'm curious, at this point in time, do you see this as sort of a path, even though meandering, it appears somewhat linear? Or can I move from gravity well 1 to 5 if I'm solely focused on 5?
So the research suggests that you can go to 5. You'll probably get close to some of the other ones, but don't get too close or you'll get sucked in. Right? That's really the game. We know, and Arlo showed me this first in the James Shore, Diana Larson stuff was clear. You can go, so essentially, if you start from stability and you want to go to learning, it turns out that the right answer is to focus on the frequency with which you are learning successfully instead of going directly to stability. It may take a couple stability practices, but if you put enough stability practices down to increase the gravity there, you might well get sucked in. You can go straight from completion to learning, but you don't go straight to we're good at learning. You go straight to we learn 1 time in 10, and then we learn 3 times in 10, instead of we go from completion to stability, right? That's my summary of the Larson Shore fluency model stuff, which I think is really intelligent now that I've read it 3 times.
And I thought Tom mentioned like the gravity wells being his most compelling thing. My aha takeaway was you could easily have multiple of these goals for different parts of an organization, and it'll be critical that you not build, generic teams like, hey, we're going to build all these teams. Here's the model, roll it out, because you'll end up very mixed results. Yeah.
Right. Oh, here's the policies for all of the teams. I'm sorry. The policies are pulling towards one of those and making the other ones harder.
Yeah. The spider's feet are all different sizes. Don't buy one size shoe. Thank you.
Yeah.
But Kyle, I think you're a bit with me on this thought, which is if you go towards the blue star aggressively, that it also has some of the best strategies for giving you the outcomes of the prior stars.
Yeah. So I have come to a point where I am interested in learning models, right? I think I can use a learning model and get some value around stability by learning about it, right? I think that's a very powerful technique, right? It is not the easiest technique to get to stability, though. Right?
The easiest is just to go straight to stability.
Yes. Right. And then get stuck in stability for years.
5 years, 10 years.
Which may be what you want to do. And that's fine. I'm not going to tell you what your goal should be.
Right.
Given that some of us see this a little bit as a progress line from left to right, and you and I started at XP, which I would call the yellow star.
Yeah.
I think that's why when we look at SAFE, we're like, you're going the wrong way.
I am sure that SAFE is an efficiency agile star.
Yeah.
It's not that you can't use it in other ways, but it leans that way pretty hard, and there's a lot of gravity pulling you that way once you start talking quarters or 10 weeks or whatever the heck they call their quarters, right? You're pulled to that gravity well.
What's after the blue star?
Well, I picked this because in real chromatic models of stars, after blue is more blue. Turns out there's several layers of blue, right? And you can get a lot better at blue, but the chromatic colors that stars come in are red, orange, yellow, light blue, medium blue, Sirius blue, right? Turns out as the star gets hotter, it moves along this path. I am sure that Tom is talking about, hey, I can build an application in 7 minutes with AI. And you know what? If you can do that, I bet you can learn real fast.
It doesn't waterfall, by the way, but it's over in 7 minutes.
Hey, Kyle, I have a question. Does path looks like an
yeah, I cheated acronym.
acronym?
I can't.
Is that an acronym or does it just mean path?
Please and thanks. So that's what I was using.
Okay.
Right? I can't actually function in the world without acronyms. People who know me better make fun of me for it. So,
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks.
and so I like the question. I started going with, hey, I care about cycle time. And honestly, it was conversations with Bob that pushed me and said, hey, no, I don't care about cycle time that much. I care about the outcomes. And so it was like, oh, you're right. I don't actually care about the cycle time very much either. It's just that the cycle time is associated with the things I care about. But I promised to do the talk and gave the path title of please and thanks before I talked to Bob. So.
So I think this is a very interesting way of looking at it. I work in a very big company, and giving that sense of we have big company, a big software development, and a lot of big customers that we just currently it's not set up to get feedback from the customers. Sometimes it takes months to get feedback. So I can understand why you push toward stability and efficiency.
I believe
it's just so hard to squeeze that out of the customers.
And they're reasonable goals. I just think that these annoying agile people should shut up about trying to pursue a learning model if what you're chasing is stability or efficiency. Right? I'm the annoying agile people, by the way. So
Kyle, I mean, that's the point that's landing hardest for me is that I mean, it's really hard to get people to not talk about learning. Like everybody's conditioned in the agile space to talk about learning. And I think you're right. And how the heck do we wrangle messy humans who think learning sounds cool?
Well, if we want to do learning, that's fine. If somebody wants to do that, I just want us to stop pretending that we can pursue a learning solution with 12-week cycles.
I absolutely agree. And so I'm thinking, how do we do this as a community? I mean, it's like we have to roll back all of the stuff that we've been talking about for decades about Agile is about learning, fast feedback, short cycles, that's being mimicked and just parroted in contexts where they want stability or efficiency or even completion. And so I think that that creates some real casualties in terms of communication, in terms of culture, right? I'm just emphasizing what you're saying, but like, I want to know how we do that. How do we make it better?
So Tom made me take out the slide that said, Kyle's early philosophical foundations include communication is hard. And a lot.
I've never heard that. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
My line is, I'm trying to provide a vocabulary. Tom wants to call it, yep, sounds like you want to do red agile. You want to do orange agile. You want to do blue agile, right? That's how Tom's talking about it. I'm talking about it from the point of view of a goal. Agile is fit to purpose, and your purpose is not matching these practices. Let's match purpose to practice. It's why I led with, look, we're talking about goal method match, not about what goal you should have. I don't care what goal you have. I do care that you pick a method that matches your goal. Right? And what's going on right now is people are, I'm sorry, because people are doing this one. Right?
I missed the first few minutes of the talk, and I'm laughing at we can all get certified. It's just making me super happy. Thank you.
Right. Just about everyone is certifiable. So, Kyle, it strikes me back in the colors of the stars that for some organizations I've seen, they don't understand the purpose for Blue Agile. Like at learning. Why do I need the learning? Or worse off, they want to be able to be rapidly adaptive, but they don't recognize the fact that they won't get there without establishing a rapid learning cycle. And so I think some of our challenge is socializing the reality of the importance of that thing. And when that's like, you know, a super powerful laser, you only want to use it in certain circumstances, and it's going to cost you to get it in place.
And I see almost, I don't know that I've ever seen a senior leader, VP plus, chase learning Agile unless they've been at a place that was doing it. They come in and go, yeah, no, you don't understand. We did some code and it was in the customer's hands 3 hours later and they told us what they didn't like and we fixed it and they were using the improved version at the end of the day, right? How can you even think about not doing that? Right? That's what happens to the people who've been through the learning thing.
I have a different strategy, which is I don't really want 4 colors. I want 3. I want red Agile, yellow Agile, green Agile, because all the executives know they want their dashboard to be green. And their red Agile is bad, and yellow Agile is a little bit trouble, but green Agile,
I love it.
is what I want to be.
And that's why Tom's in marketing and I'm not.
Right.
Oh, that's perfect.
He knows he has a horse. He's going to turn one of these into water.
Yeah. Yeah. So I also noticed that when you focus on what is it you're trying to achieve, the tool stopped not being the primary discussion point, right? Right. You didn't bring in here at all. Oh, well, here's where you do Scrum. Here's SAFe. Here's, test-driven development or anything, that's a practice, but, here's, you don't bring in the specific tool you just say, where are we trying to go? And here are the things that will get you there. And to me, that says, use what tool will help you get those things.
I
Right?
mean, if somebody pushes me right now, I will lean first towards Ivar Jakobsen's essence approach right now, which is a piecemeal, hey, I've got a set of 50 agile practices that you can use. When I talked to Ivar, I was arguing that you should approach it more as a patterns model than he was approaching it as a practices model, and that you should point out exactly which problems each of the practices are solving. And I still don't think they were doing that, but the Jakobsen essence model is clearly the closest thing we've got to this right now. Or at least it seems that way. I would argue that the Alistair Coburn Crystal stuff and the original old school Ambler disciplined agile delivery before it went PMI were also both attentive to this kind of topic.
Erica, will you talk to your comment, how many people have to be fired to get from red to blue? I want to see how your mind is working on that one.
I know. So, so I'll ask my question again, which is that, and you know me, Kyle, like I always think about humans and the significant barriers that humans present to change. And so it's one thing to talk about the focus, right? If we give a bunch of humans something new to focus on, it's nice to aspire that that's going to change their behavior. And what's probably true is that for a good portion of them, it's not going to be enough. And so, I went dark, so forgive me for going dark. But, I'm thinking how many generations, like corporate generations of turnover, moving new brains in, moving people who are stuck out. How long does it take? And how many of those generations do we need to tap into to get from red to blue?
I have seen massive motion at a Fortune 25 company going directly towards blue. That didn't mean everybody was there all of the time, but it did mean we had substantial pockets of the organization doing real blue level work. And it was within a few years. But essentially, they brought in a CIO who was both politically competent and had lived blue before.
Yeah, that's a magical pairing, isn't it? And the lack of one or the other is a magical lack. Yeah.
Right.
A few years is impressive. I mean, I'm going to talk to you more about that offline, I think.
Yeah. Tom points out that hidden somewhere in Cotter's corpus is the phrase, organizational change is a generational challenge, which means it will take a generation to do it. And I also pointed at Thomas Kuhn's equivalence statement. Like, look, when people leave, that you actually get progress because people grow up in a method and they learn to do that method and they keep doing it.
So from a natural selection standpoint, it's actually probably better to just let the startups disrupt everything and create something new. It's faster.
Oh, I just thought of the new metaphor. The thing that messed me up my whole Agile career was like the first company I did a big XP on, their star was about to go supernova. So they were all fleeing the star.
Ah,
So it was easy. It was easy to move them someplace new. The gravity well was disintegrating around them. And that's a little bit of what we see in Cotter as well. Like what was so
yeah, the urgent
disappointing
call
about
to action.
the
Yeah.
book was that he didn't really have any good answers. Like if the organization's about to die, maybe you can get this to happen. But it turns out it's a good observation.
Yeah,
Right?
you might have to move off to a space station with a few high potentials, so to speak, and start over. But
Kyle, have you read Cotter's Our Iceberg is Melting book?
No, I think
It's
you've
about
mentioned it.
penguins, but it could easily be about stars and planets and ships.
Or mice or something. No,
No, it's
that's
penguins. It's penguins.
I'm sorry, I was joking about who moved my cheese.
Oh, sorry.
Right, it wasn't a very good joke. So I believe that founders can do it. So exploding stars work, founders work, and small organizations work, and almost nothing else works for change, right? But this wasn't a discussion about org change, which I would be happy to do a different talk about. This was a discussion about, look, we are utterly failing to communicate because we call all of these stars agile, and they're completely different things with different practices and different gravity wells, and that's
And some of us don't even think two of these stars are agile. There are three of them. Some of us are fairly convinced that three of them don't fall under the label just reading the manifesto.
No, the manifesto clearly is a yellow star.
Yes.
Right? If
Well,
you read the manifesto, it's yellow. It is bright yellow. It is not blue, and it is not orange.
yeah. I thought he was saying 3 of the 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Right? And I think it's Kyle's opinion. I think it's super clear. The manifesto is yellow, SAFE is orange. Lean startup, modern craftsmanship, DevOps, product agile is in the blue space, right? Particularly as you move towards more of the military Auftrags tactic and turn the ship around and it's your ship and team of teams, and those are chasing blue, right? And so lean startup culture and military stuff is pushing us on the blue side. Traditional agile is deep yellow. SAFE is solidly orange. And I'm not saying any of those are bad goals. I'm just saying they're different goals.
So you're saying don't hire Kyle for at least 3 of those goals. I want blue agile. Hire me for that goal.
I'm good at that one.
Right. Well, good. What a great discussion we've had.
Thanks, Dean.
What a great talk, Kyle. I really want to thank you for spending the time and to be with us. So,
oh, I had great
so
fun.
much.
Thank you.
I found this very insightful, and I want to do a little plugging, if I may. Can you stop sharing your screen? There you go. I want to just share mine briefly because I think it's right here. Actually, right there. Okay. So can you see my screen on Agile Groupies? So we have a few other meetups happening this year. We've got in November 16th, what is an ego and why would I want one? So that'll be a very interesting part, very on that whole organizational dynamics. So join our Tom Bellinson, who will be presenting this to us. And since we've had this lovely discussion talking about SAFE, how did I know? When I scheduled, I've got Matt Lassiter coming in from San Antonio, Texas, talking about SAFE. I love it. The good, the bad, and the ugly. So many organizations are beginning to talk about SAFE and go there. It's kind of, I'm noticing the next big buzzword. So I just thought this would be kind of fun to hear from someone who's working in it. Have a nice lively discussion on where it fits. And after having your talk, Kyle, it's really nice to be able to see, yeah, I get it. This is where it really fits. And maybe why, you can look at that and say, all right, you're an engineering team. You're really worried about just these things. That's all you ever want to go to. Okay, that might be the right thing for you. So we have a couple of meetups coming up this year. So check out these are both on Agile Groupies, the Ann Arbor Tech, and Daytona Devs, the 3 sites that we're coordinating. And I'm posting these on all of them. So however you've come in and joined us, you should find these other 2 events for this year, November and then December.
Awesome.
For what it's worth, Matt's great. Love Matt. Worked with him for years, off and on.
Yeah.
Very
yeah.
worth listening to.
Good. Glad to hear that. So folks, be sure to jump out to Meetup and, find us there and attend the other meetings as best you can. And I'm going to stop the recording at this point.
Thanks, Aline.